There's a mistake almost everyone makes in the Scottish Highlands. They think the best looking locations are the most important ones. But the perfect castle ruins are perfect for a reason. Because they were placed to control roads, crossings and loch routes. Urquhart above Loch Ness shows it in the way it was attacked, rebuilt and then partly destroyed on purpose, because control mattered more than preservation. And on Skye, Mealt Falls shows the same idea in nature. Because one day it feels open and the next day it feels sealed off. Stay with me, because the mistake isn't just where people go, it's what they think they're looking at. And one small detail changes everything. Once you spot the pattern, you'll understand why most people come home with the same Scotland. And why the Scotland they missed was never hidden. It was decided by the path they took. Glen Etive sits in a valley carved by ice that once covered Scotland like a frozen ocean. Though it may look wild and empty, people lived here for thousands of years, before they were forced out to make room for farms that cleared the forests and left the hillsides bare. Because it sits low between steep mountains, this place creates its own weather. Film crews loved this spot so much that parts of James Bond's Skyfall were shot right in this valley. Long before, wolves kept deer numbers in balance, but after their disappearance, red deer took over completely. Now the largest land mammals in the region, they consume so much vegetation that young trees rarely get a chance to return. Moving in herds across open hillsides, these animals constantly search for fresh grass, spending most of the day eating, resting and chewing their food a second time. They use steep slopes as lookout points, standing high on ridges so they can spot danger or new grazing areas quickly. During harsh storms, they drop into the more sheltered valley floor and use the land's shape like a natural shield while they continue to feed and rest. Among adults, males carry large branching antlers that can spread wider than a person's arm span. Each year, those antlers grow anew, then fall away and begin the cycle again. Water poses little challenge, as these animals swim rivers and narrow channels with ease, even in icy conditions. Like cattle, their multi-chambered stomachs swallow food whole before bringing it back up to chew later. That strength and presence draw human attention, with travellers gathering near landmarks like Urquhart Castle to photograph these iconic animals. It has been destroyed and rebuilt so many times that what stands today is mostly rubble. At one point, its own defenders blew it up, denying enemies the chance to ever use it. More battles were fought here than at almost any other Scottish fortress, which turned it into one of the most contested spots in history. The ruins sit on the edge of a lake so deep that entire structures could vanish beneath its surface. In its past, attackers even came by water, with pirates raiding the castle from boats rather than from land. During its peak, this fortress controlled who could travel through the entire region by boat. Despite its dramatic history, the remains you see today are younger than many buildings still standing in major cities. Just beyond Urquhart Castle's broken walls lies a body of water far more famous than the fortress itself, Loch Ness. This massive lake holds more fresh water than all the lakes in England and Wales combined. Its dark, tea-coloured water is so murky that you can barely see your hand a foot below the surface. And this very darkness fuels the legend of monsters, as floating logs and waves take on the shapes of giant creatures. Yet scientists have scanned the loch with sonar and found no large creatures, only schools of fish and eels. The water stays cold all year, which means anything that falls in, including bodies, rarely floats back up. Occasionally seals swim up from the ocean, popping their heads above water and startling tourists into monster reports. At the southern tip of this mysterious loch lies Fort Augustus, a town built to control who travelled through these waters. Unlike most settlements, it did not grow naturally. It was deliberately created by soldiers to watch over and dominate the local population. It was named after Duke Augustus, who never actually visited the place built in his name to celebrate military power. Troops stationed here had a clear mission: to prevent locals from keeping their culture, language, and traditional dress. Over time, the original stronghold was dismantled and transformed into a monastery, burying much of its violent past. Today, a series of lochs cuts straight through the town, lifting boats like stair steps between different water levels. These gates link Loch Ness to the open sea, forming a water route that crosses the length of the country. Now visitors stroll peacefully where soldiers once marched to crush any sign of resistance. At the town's edge, other creatures carry on unnoticed, including badgers carving their underground homes into the hillsides. These animals dig tunnels so wide that a person could almost crawl through without getting stuck. A single family shares one vast underground den, complete with separate chambers for sleeping and feeding. Mostly active at night, they rely on an exceptionally strong sense of smell to find food in total darkness. Thick, loose skin allows them to twist and turn when grabbed, making escape far easier. Their powerful front claws function like natural shovels, allowing them to shift soil faster than most animals can dig. When fights break out, they target the face, delivering bites that rarely miss. Their diet consists of worms, insects and roots, although they also raid bushes for fruit when the opportunity arises. Well-worn tracks pressed into the grass led straight back to hidden entrances in the ground. Follow the quiet forest paths, and they lead to the falls of Foyers, where water plunges straight into Loch Ness, like nature's own power show. The drop is sudden and powerful, shaking the air like a passing train, shrinking to a thin ribbon in dry spells, and turning into a roaring wall after heavy rain. Constant spray coats the rocks, helping plants cling to tiny ledges, and this same force once powered a large factory that briefly turned the wild gorge into an industrial site. Heading west through the valley, you'll reach Glenfinnan Viaduct, the famous Harry Potter train bridge. Its sweeping curve is so perfectly placed that it became one of the most photographed rail views on Earth. From here, passengers can lean out and see almost the entire train suspended in the air ahead. Steam and smoke rise over the arches, and strong winds can blow them sideways, so the train seems to disappear for a moment. The bridge was built entirely from concrete, when most builders still trusted stone, a daring experiment that has carried heavy trains for over a century without major repairs. Beneath the arches, deer, sheep and hikers move freely, almost as if two worlds coexist, one above and one below. The line still runs as a working route, not just a movie set, letting travellers ride the magic train to reach ordinary towns. And for many, stepping off here is just the beginning, pushing onward to the Isle of Skye, where jagged rocks and waterfalls look so unreal they could belong in a fantasy film. It wasn't always an island. It became one when water levels rose after the ice melted and cut it off from the mainland. Its dramatic shape comes from early volcanic eruptions, where lava cooled into sheer cliffs and sharp peaks. Meanwhile, the Old Man of Storr rises from a broken cliff face, a sharp spike left after rock collapsed around it, once thought by people to be the work of giants and spirits. Some of the rock layers even hold fossils from a time when this place lay beneath a warm, shallow sea. That mix of fire and water is why film crews return again and again when they need places that look like alien planets or fantasy worlds without building any sets. The island's western tip holds a surprise, a lighthouse standing alone on a narrow strip of rock jutting into the sea at Ness Point. Winds blow so fiercely here that waves sometimes crash right over the rocks. During storms, the lighthouse keeper had to use a cable to reach his house when the ground shook too violently to walk. These high rocks drop so steeply that people walking near them sometimes feel the ground vibrate when big waves hit below. Sea mist frequently shrouds the point, and in the past, ships ran aground, mistaking the light's distance. At the same time, shaggy Highland cattle graze peacefully on the windswept land, unfazed by the wild weather. Their long hair acts like a built-in blanket, keeping them outside in storms that would send most farm animals running for cover. Unlike many breeds, they store fat around their organs rather than on the outside, keeping their meat lean even when they look huge. Their wide horns serve as tools, used to dig through snow, push aside branches, and defend their young. Calves learn the local grazing routes from their mothers, following the same paths across the hills year after year. These cattle can eat tough plants that softer breeds would never touch, turning scrubby grass into strong bodies. Their long bangs protect their eyes from wind, rain, and biting insects, like natural sunglasses with fringe. When tourists get too close for selfies, the cows usually stay calm, but if they feel trapped, those horns can swing fast. Herds often choose the highest, windiest spots to rest, where insects bother them less, and they can see trouble coming. From some fields, the cows graze under views so strange that the land seems unreal, with tall rock towers rising in the distance. One of those towers is the Old Man of Storr, a spike that stands taller than all the others. The name comes from the rock's shape, which looks like an old man's face, while Storr is an Old Norse word meaning great, or big, given by Viking settlers who once ruled these islands. It is actually not a separate mountain, but a leftover chunk from a massive cliff that collapsed and slid away. The ground around it is still slowly moving, so tiny shifts and cracks constantly reshape the slopes beneath your feet. Rockfalls from nearby cliffs mean the path hikers take today is rarely the same as it was a few years ago. Climbers who once tried to scale the main spike discovered the rock is so crumbly that whole blocks broke away under their hands. From certain angles, the tower lines up with other rocks and gives the illusion of a row of giant figures walking along the ridge. On misty days, the spike disappears and then suddenly reappears when the clouds lift, as if someone flipped a switch. At night, its dark shape can hide the stars and turn the sky into a rough, uneven wall. And when the air finally clears, that sharp shape becomes the perfect spot to watch nature's spectacular light show, the Northern Lights. These lights appear when charged particles from space smash into the top of our atmosphere, turning the sky itself into a glowing screen. Different colours emerge because different gases in the air light up in unique ways, like separate paints on a dark canvas. The show seems slow to the naked eye, but cameras reveal fast ripples and flashes racing across the sky that often go unnoticed. On Skye, the aurora sometimes hugs the horizon so low that people mistake it for strange clouds or distant fires. Phones can capture vivid greens and purples, even when the display looks faint and grey to human eyes. The lights go quiet for stretches, then suddenly erupt into bands and curtains with no warning at all. Strong solar storms can push the aurora far south, turning otherwise calm Eilean nights into surprise sky shows. At times, the glow reflects off black waters between the cliffs and leads toward the next hidden pool at Loch Coruisk. It sits in a rock bowl with no roads, so most visitors must hike rough paths or arrive by small boat. Steep slopes drop sharply into the water with almost no flat shore, and sudden mist appears quickly, hiding the water's edge until the air clears. Beyond the loch, the wild coastline stretches around Dunvegan Castle, a fortress held by one clan for hundreds of years. It is perched on a rock above the sea, forcing enemies to attack uphill, while defenders rained arrows and stones down. From the shore below, boat crews had to request permission to land, giving the clan full control over who came and went. The same family still lives and sleeps in the bedrooms where their great-great-grandfathers once planned battles. Different parts of the castle were added bit by bit, so walking inside feels like stepping through layers of time glued together. The castle now welcomes guests who peer from its windows toward the cliffs concealing Skye's strangest feature, the Quiraing Landslip. The entire hillside is still slowly moving, so the ground under the road keeps shifting, and engineers must repair it repeatedly. Huge blocks of rock broke away from a higher cliff and now sit at odd angles, as if someone kicked a stone wall until it collapsed into strange shapes. Some of these broken towers have nicknames like the Prison and the Needle, because they resemble man-made forts more than random rocks. The gaps between the rocks form narrow corridors where voices bounce, so a single shout can sound like it comes from multiple directions at once. For filmmakers, this area is a dream, already looking like a fantasy world with almost no special effects needed. Just a short drive away, the wild cliffs soften into gentle hills shaped like tiny cones. Locals call this place the Fairy Glen. At first glance, the slopes look carefully arranged, leading many visitors to assume they were built by hand, but landslides and long-gone ice shaped every curve. One rocky mound rises above the rest like a miniature castle tower, tempting kids to climb it and rule their own toy kingdom. Over time, visitors have stacked stones into circles and spirals, then blamed fairies when the patterns quietly shift overnight. Meanwhile, farmers still graze livestock here, and sheep wander through the so-called magic, as if it's just another hillside. When mist rolls in, the low hills vanish and reappear so quickly it can feel as if the land itself is breathing. That same ocean wind shaping these slopes races onward to the coast, where Mealt Falls plunges straight off a cliff edge into the sea. At times it drops so far that strong gusts blow the water sideways, or even upward, before it reaches the ocean below. On windy days, the water never actually hits the sea. It tears into mist that drifts back onto the land. At the rocky summit, layer after layer of flat rock stretches outward, stacked like giant pages in a book, each one weathered over time. In fact, dinosaurs once walked across the mud that hardened into these cliffs, and their footprints remain pressed into stone. Below, the sea churns constantly, carving caves into the cliff base that you can only glimpse from a boat. A little farther along the coast, Portree emerges, a harbour town where boats rest calmly among rows of cheerful houses. Situated along the water, the colourful buildings were painted in bright shades so fishermen could spot homes through fog and storms. Historically, the town earned its name, King's Port, after a monarch once landed here to make peace with island clans who refused to follow his orders. Thanks to its natural shelter, the harbour stays flat, while waves crash wildly just outside the bay. Most of the roads around pass through this town, which makes it impossible to explore the area without stopping at least once. Fishing boats still leave the pier each morning, though now they share space with tourist ferries and sailboats. From the harbour walls, visitors often spot puffins bobbing on the water or gliding low with beaks full of fish. For most of the year, these seabirds float alone far out at sea, only returning to land when it's time to lay eggs. On the cliffs, they dig burrows in the soil, using their beaks and feet, sometimes taking over abandoned rabbit holes to save effort. A single puffin can carry more than a dozen small fish at once, lined up sideways in its beak and held in place by tiny backward-pointing spines on its tongue. Their bright orange beaks fade to dull grey in winter, so the colourful look that delights tourists appears only during breeding season. To take off, they run across the water and flap furiously, looking clumsy until they finally lift into the air. When nesting ends, these small seabirds vanish and return to the open ocean, leaving the island behind for Scotland's tallest peak, Ben Nevis. Most days the mountain sits wrapped in cloud, so climbers reach the summit only to find a world of white mist. Even in summer, temperatures stay low enough for patches of snow to cling to shaded slopes year-round. Geologically, this peak began as a collapsed volcano, leaving sheer northern cliffs so steep that winter climbers rely on ice axes and ropes. In one bizarre publicity stunt, Someone even drove a car to the top, then dismantled it and carried the pieces back down. The ruins of an old weather station still crown the summit, abandoned after years of recording wind, snow, and bitter cold. Despite its modest height, more people die here than on many taller mountains, often after underestimating how fast conditions can turn dangerous. On rare clear days, views stretch to distant islands and mountain ranges, but those moments come less than once a week. High above, a small bird called the ptarmigan survives the brutal cold by changing its feathers with the seasons. In winter, its plumage turns pure white to blend with snow, then shifts to brown and grey as the ground thaws. To cope with ice, its feet grow thick feather coverings, acting like natural snowshoes that stop it from sinking into drifts. Even when food is scarce, the bird feeds year-round on plants, buds and seeds, digging through snow to reach frozen vegetation. From these frozen slopes, a different kind of drama unfolds at Eilean Donan Castle, one of the most photographed castles in Scotland. Perched on a tiny island, it rises where three separate bodies of water meet, giving defenders views in every direction. Enemy warships destroyed the fortress with cannon fire, leaving it in ruins for many years. What tourists see today is actually a reconstruction from the early 1900s, not the original fortress. The man who restored it relied on old drawings and careful guesses to recreate rooms that had completely vanished. During the work, hidden chambers were uncovered, revealing spaces no one knew existed until walls came down. A stone bridge now connects the island to the shore, though for centuries the only crossing was by boat at high tide. Film crews flock here, using the castle as a stand-in for fortresses in movies and shows around the world. At low tide, visitors can walk on exposed rocks around the island and see barnacles and seaweed clinging to the foundation. Down the coast, another island fortress waits, Castle Stalker, perched alone on a tiny rock in the middle of Loch. Its name comes from the Gaelic Stalker, meaning hunter or falconer, referencing Scottish nobles who once used the stronghold for hunting and falconry in the surrounding hills. Legend has it that a chief once lost his fortress in a drunken bet over a rowing boat and gave it away for almost nothing. At low tide, a narrow strip of land sometimes appears and allows visitors to walk part of the way before wading through shallow water to reach the door. The tower stood empty and roofless for more than 100 years, until a family finally restored it room by room. This isolated castle even appears in a well-known comedy film, where knights ride up and argue across the water. Leaving the loch behind, the road climbs into Glencoe, where steep volcanic peaks and cascading waterfalls create some of the most stunning views in the Highlands. One moment, the world is quiet and isolated. The next, it bursts open into Glencoe, alive with steep peaks and cascading waterfalls. This glen was actually born in fire. A massive volcano erupted and collapsed, leaving mountains as raw and wild as the stories they hold. But its beauty has a dark twin. Soldiers once slipped into homes pretending to be guests, spreading fear and chaos to enforce loyalty. The betrayal ran deep, forcing survivors to flee into snow-choked valleys, with the mountains keeping a silent, icy watch over their flight. Yet nature doesn't pause for grief. Winter turns waterfalls into towering icicles, daring climbers to scale them with axes and ropes. Anchoring the valley, Etive Moor rises like a perfectly shaped pyramid, so majestic it almost feels unreal. This mountain is essentially a volcanic plug, the hardened heart of an old volcano that refused to erode while everything around it crumbled away. In fact, the rock here is older than bones, dating back to a time before complex life even existed. Climbers call one route the chasm, a massive crack splitting the mountain's face as if someone swung a giant axe. Winter turns the slopes into slick ice sheets, where a fall can send a climber sliding hundreds of metres before coming to a stop. Its name translates to Great Herdsman of Etive, a nod to the cattle it once watched over. Golden eagles patrol the cliffs, riding the updrafts created by the pyramid shape, to hunt without even flapping their wings. These birds can spot a rabbit from over 3 kilometres away and have talons strong enough to crush bones with astonishing power. But humans once nearly wiped them out here, as sheep farmers poisoned eagles they believed were killing lambs. A single eagle pair needs a hunting territory larger than several thousand football fields just to survive. They return to the same nest year after year, piling sticks until some nests weigh as much as a small car. Young ones are eventually kicked out by their parents, forced to find new territories, or starve. During courtship, they display a breathtaking dance of trust and danger. Leaving the steep glen behind, Glencoe gradually opens into a broader valley, where Loch rests calmly at its eastern end. It never fully freezes, even in the coldest winters, thanks to underground springs that keep it flowing. Its bottom is blanketed in a thick layer of peat, preserving anything that sinks like a natural time capsule. During storms, the Loch can swell violently, swallowing the shoreline in mere minutes. Its name translates to Loch of the Three Sisters, a tribute to the 3 towering peaks that rise dramatically beyond the water. To many visitors, the sisters appear as three separate mountains standing side by side. In fact, they form the front ridges of one massive peak, hidden behind them. The true summit remains completely out of sight, tucked away like a secret room behind a false wall. That illusion often tricks climbers into thinking they have reached the top, unaware the real peak still lies beyond the ridge. Between the ridges, valleys plunge so steeply that even a single footstep can trigger avalanches in winter. Above those slopes, rock faces shed boulders constantly, causing the shape of each sister to change year by year. Beyond the geology, the name traces back to a clan chief's three daughters, each married into different clans that later turned against one another. Farther north, the countryside softens into rolling hills along the shores near Ullapool, a small fishing town. It was built as a planned settlement to catch herring, essentially a fishing factory disguised as a village. At its peak, the fish arrived in massive numbers, then vanished almost overnight, leaving the town to survive on whatever else the sea could offer. Even so, the harbour remains one of the few deep enough for large fishing vessels, drawing boats from far beyond the coast. Grey shapes surface between the boats, grey seals waiting patiently for scraps from the day's catch. These clever mammals can hold their breath for so long and stay underwater for over an hour without surfacing. At night, they hunt in complete darkness, using sensitive whiskers to detect vibrations from fish moving nearby. Males fight fiercely during breeding season, sometimes biting chunks out of each other's necks in brutal displays of dominance. Pups are born with white fur, which they shed after just a few weeks. They have even learned to steal fish directly from nets, tearing holes to reach the floating pantries. While seals dominate this calm harbour, just beyond the shore, mountain waters roar over cliffs at Steel Falls. It plunges so far that the water breaks into mist before it even reaches the bottom, like watching rain fall upward. Strong winds can blow the cascade sideways, spraying water in completely unexpected directions. Flash floods can swell the falls so suddenly that the normally safe crossing becomes a deadly trap in minutes. Where the rivers meet the sea, Mingarry Castle rises, its thick walls built from the same dark rock it stands on, making it almost invisible from the water. Enemy clans once tried to smoke out those inside by lighting fires at the entrance, suffocating everyone trapped within the walls. The fortress changed hands so many times through betrayal and tragedy that no single family could ever claim it as truly theirs. Parts of the walls were built with a mortar that included animal blood, which makes it stronger than many modern cements. Going east, Loch Lomond opens up as a massive freshwater lake so big it contains islands, beaches, and entire villages along its edges. In fact, it has a split personality. The southern end stays shallow and relatively warm, while the north drops into dark, freezing depths. Some islands were once used to isolate people with severe illnesses, separating them from the rest of the population. Another island served as a prison, where clan chiefs chained up enemies and cut off every possible escape. During storms, the water level can rise so fast it swallows beaches and floods buildings in under an hour. Stone circles at Clava Cairns wait in the hills beyond, built by people who arranged rocks with purpose, but left no explanation for why. The circles are precisely aligned so sunlight pours through the entrance passage, only on the winter solstice, like a calendar carved from stone. Bodies were cremated and bones placed inside the chambers, though no one knows whether they belong to honoured leaders or sacrificial victims. The builders hauled massive stones from miles away, despite having plenty nearby, suggesting the materials themselves held special meaning. Some stones bear cup-shaped carvings that collect rainwater, possibly used in rituals or as offerings to unknown forces. The site also lines up with other stone circles across the country, forming a pattern that may be intentional or pure coincidence. Into the hills, Cairngorms National Park unfolds, where the highest mountain plateau in the country holds snow even when the valleys below turn green. In fact, the park is larger than the entire country of Luxembourg. Imagine a whole nation replaced by forest, rock, and wind. Traces of the early Caledonian forest still survive here, with trees that began growing before the Roman Empire even existed. Some valleys form their own microclimates, where Arctic plants cling to life beside warmer forest species that shouldn't coexist. Deep in these old woods lives the capercaillie, one of the world's largest grouse, territorial, too heavy to fly well, and bold enough to attack if threatened. During mating season, males become fiercely aggressive, attacking cars, people, and even horses. To attract mates, they perform bizarre displays, fanning their tail feathers, puffing out their throats, and making sounds like popping corks and grinding metal. Females, however, are far more fragile in behaviour, abandoning their chicks if disturbed even once during nesting. That sensitivity gives chicks brutal odds, with most failing to survive their first month due to cold, predators, or starvation. In winter, the survivors switched to eating pine needles, food so toxic it would poison most other birds. Despite these adaptations, the species once went completely extinct here. Reintroduction followed, but it barely worked, as birds flew into fences and power lines they had never evolved to recognise. Today, they are so rare that every single death is investigated like a crime scene to determine the cause. While these large birds struggle to survive on the forest floor, smaller red-furred climbers called red squirrels race through the branches above, facing their own fight against invaders. Red squirrels were pushed to the edge of extinction when grey squirrels were brought over as fashionable pets, escaped and spread rapidly. Grey squirrels carry a virus that barely affects them but kills red squirrels within days of infection. On top of that, reds can't digest the same foods as greys, so when greys strip an area bare, the natives starve even if other food sits nearby. To survive, red squirrels bury thousands of pine cones and nuts each year, forgetting most of them and accidentally planting entire forests. They even bite off green pine cones and store them underwater in boggy ground, keeping them fresh through winter. Their front teeth never stop growing, forcing them to gnaw constantly or risk the teeth growing back into their own skulls. During extreme food shortages, mothers may eat their own young to survive and try breeding again later. Red squirrels fiercely defend their turf, shaking their tails and chattering at anything that enters, including humans and much larger animals. And unexpectedly, one predator has become an ally. Pine martens hunt grey squirrels more effectively than reds, giving native squirrels a fighting chance. These animals are cat-sized weasels, able to climb trees as fast as squirrels can race through the branches. In the past, they were hunted nearly to extinction, after gamekeepers blamed them for killing chickens and game birds. Pine martens use partially retractable claws like climbing hooks, allowing them to chase prey straight up tree trunks. They are highly opportunistic, raiding bird feeders, beehives and even trash bins, and eat everything from berries to roadkill. Despite their fearsome reputation, they often prefer fruit and jam, sometimes breaking into houses just to steal sweet food. Where woodland ends and saltwater begins, the Isle of Mull rises from the waves, with cliffs and coves sheltering its own wildlife. The island is built in layers of cooled lava like a geological pancake, while its waters hide shipwrecks and treacherous currents. Across the land, parts of the region have more sheep than people, with flocks roaming freely through towns, blocking roads and nibbling gardens. Tobermory, a colourful harbour town on the northern shore, curves along the waterfront, its painted buildings stacked like a rainbow above the grey sea. That bright paint wasn't purely decorative. It guided sailors safely back to their homes through foggy nights. Built on loose sediment rather than solid rock, the town sits on ground that's constantly sinking and shifting. During storm surges, houses closest to the water get flooded, with seawater pouring through front doors and into the ground floors. Several buildings are supported by metal supports and reinforced walls as the original stone foundations crumble into the harbour. Fewer than 1,000 permanent residents live in Tobermory, yet in summer, tourists outnumber locals 10 to 1. Grey and black birds with intelligent eyes patrol the edges of the harbour, watching for dropped food and unguarded catches with extreme patience. Among them, hooded crows stand out. They can recognise individual human faces and remember anyone who has crossed them for years. These clever birds often work in teams. One distracts while others snatch the prize, like a coordinated heist crew. They drop shellfish from heights to crack them open, return to the same perfect spots, and even use cars as nutcrackers, letting vehicles do the hard work. Crows hold grudges, dive-bombing humans who wrong them, and teach their offspring to do the same. They cache thousands of food items across their territory, recalling the exact location of every stash months later. Their ingenuity doesn't stop there. They've learned to open trash bins, unzip backpacks, and even pick simple locks to reach hidden meals. From the coastal towns, freshwater lochs cut through the hills, with Loch Mari spreading across the interior, dotted with forested islands. Though the water seems pure, parasites can persist in the icy depths for decades, posing a danger to anyone drinking it untreated. Massive birds soar above the islands, circling and scanning the waters below, their powerful talons ready to snatch and crush any fish that strays too close. White-tailed sea eagles have wingspans so wide they could block your entire view, bigger than a door when gliding overhead. Humans once hunted and poisoned them to extinction, blaming the birds for livestock losses. Conservationists reintroduced chicks from other regions and fed them by hand to rebuild the population. Their talons are strong enough to pierce boots, carry prey heavier than a small dog, and snatch fish at full speed without slowing mid-flight. Territorial pairs attack rivals mid-air, sometimes killing other eagles that stray into their hunting grounds. Young birds are driven away by their parents once they can fly, forced to find empty territories or starve. From Loch Mari, crumbling stone walls rise beside another loch, where Ardvrek Castle sits half collapsed on a rocky point. The fortress stands in a Sint, a region so remote and stripped bare that jagged mountains poke through thin soil like exposed bones. Parts of the castle are sinking into the water, built as it was on unstable ground that shifts and slides over time. The surrounding region holds some of the oldest rock on Earth, formed when life had barely begun. Entire villages that once clustered around the castle were cleared, leaving only foundations and empty fields where communities once flourished. A dark legend surrounds the daughter of the MacLeod chief, whose father promised her to the devil to help finish the castle. When she discovered his true nature on their wedding night, she threw herself from the tower into Loch Assynt, becoming the Weeping Mermaid, whose cries are said to haunt the loch. From haunted towers to open horizons, the North Coast 500 beckons, one of Europe's most isolated shorelines. This coastal route winds through emptiness, so complete that you can drive for an hour without seeing another car or building. Along cliff edges, the road clings precariously, where one wrong turn could send a vehicle tumbling straight into the ocean below. Entire stretches have no cell service, gas stations, or medical help. Villages along the path were deliberately emptied to make room for sheep, leaving crumbling walls and abandoned churches scattered across the moors. The land here is so barren that even grass struggles to grow, with exposed rock dominating the view for miles. Tourists flock to capture the stark emptiness, transforming the forced depopulation into a breathtaking visual spectacle. Eventually the loop curves past Dunvegan Castle, where towers and turrets rise above manicured gardens that seem almost unreal against the wild coast. This fairy tale looking castle was built with money earned by forcing families off their land and burning their homes to the ground. The family who owned it kicked out entire communities to make room for sheep farms that made them richer than royalty. Inside, the castle holds more rooms than most hotels, with secret passages and hidden staircases, allowing servants to remain invisible. Not far from there, the route pushes onward to Smoo Cave, where the rock opens into a cathedral-sized chamber, and a waterfall crashes down from deep inside the stone. Its name may come from an old word for hiding place, and smugglers used the shadowed corridors to stash stolen goods. It has two entrances carved by entirely different forces. Seawater hollowed out the front, while a river punched through the roof from above. The waterfall drops through a hole in the ceiling from a stream flowing across fields above, which forms a dramatic collision between surface water and the sea below. From shadowed stone to open fields, Culloden Battlefield was a place of open combat, where soldiers had nowhere to hide as the rebellion's fate was sealed. The entire battle lasted less than an hour, about the time it takes to watch a TV show, but over 1,000 people died in that brief window. Metal detectors are banned across the site because visitors kept unearthing bones, buttons and weapons to sell as souvenirs. The site was nearly destroyed when plans to build a highway straight through the battlefield were proposed, only to be stopped at the last moment. Toward the sea, and Plockton appears, a small village so unexpectedly picturesque, it's called the Jewel of the Highlands. Part of that nickname comes from the sheltered harbour, where calm water creates mirror-like reflections that polish the scene into something almost unreal. The village itself was founded as a fishing settlement for families displaced from inland areas. What feels natural and timeless was carefully shaped by people, right down to the palm trees planted to demonstrate what warm ocean currents could achieve. That same current keeps the harbour ice-free year-round, even when lochs just a few miles inland freeze solid. Past this sheltered bays, Glen rises, a glacial valley preserved as a national nature reserve, where towering pines and quiet lochs form a sanctuary for the Highlands' rarest feline. Scottish wildcats are elusive and so scarce that scientists debate whether any purebred individuals still exist. They resemble chunky house cats, but are far bolder, confronting threats head-on instead of fleeing. Centuries of hunting and the spread of feral domestic cats have left hybrids vastly outnumbering pure wildcats, putting the species at risk of complete genetic loss. Camera traps often capture nothing for months, and even when an animal appears, experts cannot always confirm its purity. Conservation programs breed wildcats in captivity and release them cautiously, but survival remains difficult in a world dominated by hybridized populations. This is Scottish Highlands, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of Virginia State, check out this video.